Hey. Time for an out of this world story from rSpace. 9 years together, 2 cats, and a mysterious pair of wine glasses. A picturesque scene of domestic bliss, right? Wrong. Today on rSpace, is there such a thing as a perfect relationship? My attempt at fixing the plumbing at home clued me in on my partner's affair. I left her with no house and exposed her cheating. I, 44 male, and Amy, 34 female, have been together for nearly 9 years. We aren't married, and that's fine with me. Our families know each other, and they sometimes come over and spend weekends with us. We have a good thing going, or at least I thought we did. We have no kids yet, but there are 2 cats and a mortgage that she contributes to on occasion. Comfortable is the word I'd use to describe the way that we were living. I first met Amy by complete chance, of all places, at a playground. I was there with my niece, and Amy was there with a friend who had kids. I can't even remember what kicked off the conversation. What I do remember is not wanting it to end. It wasn't just that I'd been single for a long time and was rusty with women, but it was more than that. She was younger than me and held a conversation in a way I hadn't experienced in ages. At that point, I had pretty much cemented much younger women as far from stimulating. But the conversation we had was rather enlightening. I travel for work, and when I'm not at work, I'm an introvert who doesn't have much time for relationships. That time at the park, I asked for her number, but she didn't give it to me, which was to be expected. From the beginning, I was hooked on the idea of getting a much younger woman like her to consider me. I mean, it's one way to know that you still got some pull even as you get older. I knew the friend that she was with at the playground though, so I wasn't about to give up that easily. A week later, I coincidentally ended up back at the playground, this time without my niece, who had gone back home to her parents, but Amy's friend was there. I played it cool and somehow convinced her to give me Amy's number. It took a whole lot of work, but she said that she was tired of Amy complaining about being single, and she had seen how well we connected that day. I messaged her, and we hit it off immediately. Our first date was at my house. Things moved pretty quickly after that. Within 6 months, she'd moved in. I didn't ask her to, but at the time, it felt like a natural progression. She had stuff in my place already, a toothbrush, some clothes, and slowly but surely, she just stopped going back to her apartment. By the time her lease was up, we both just figured, why not? I thought it was great. No more lonely nights after coming home from a trip. For her, it was even closer to work. We settled into a routine. Life was easy. At least, it wasn't until everything started to unravel. There was no I suspected something was wrong moment until the actual point that I knew something was wrong. Sure, she'd been going out more often, hanging out with the girls, and coming home later than usual. But I didn't think much of it. She was young, and I figured it was normal. I know there's a substantial age gap between us, one that many of you will likely get at me for, but I know with that kind of age gap, some things just come with the territory. I couldn't exactly keep up with people her age anymore. After all, we all need space, and I never considered myself the clingy type. It did happen pretty suddenly, and it wasn't exactly like her, but I trusted her. Now, I've always been the guy who fixes things around the house. I mean, if I'm going to be the man of the house, I've really got to be the man of the house. So I've always been handy. I have no professional training, but with the internet and common sense, I'm usually able to fix most of the issues that we have at home. One week, I got home from a business trip earlier than expected. I was supposed to be away for 2 weeks, but managed to wrap things up in half the time. I thought I'd surprise her. When I walked in, she looked surprised, like genuinely caught off guard, but at the same time, pissed. Weird behavior, but I brushed it off. Didn't think much of it. She acted somewhat normal after that. The next day, while she was at work, I decided to fix the kitchen sink because it had been leaking for a while. Nothing major, just one of those small annoyances I kept putting off. I figured I'd tackle it and score some points with her after whatever the strange reaction that she had given me the day before was. So there I was, under the sink, messing with the pipes, and that's when I noticed something odd. Tucked way back behind the pipes were 2 wine glasses, with a little wine still left in each. Now here's the thing. I don't drink wine. Never liked it. I've always been a beer guy, and I don't need glasses for that. But Amy drinks wine, and she's got a favorite wine glass that was a gift from her best friend. These glasses weren't hers, not the ones we usually used, and I didn't even recognize them. I had no idea we even owned glasses like that. That's when I knew something was definitely fishy. I didn't approach her about it at all. I still have certain ideas about younger women, and as much as I knew her, I felt like there was no way I wouldn't seem suspicious or doubtful of her if I started questioning twin wine glasses under the sink. I didn't want to have to deal with the emotional fallout of that. Instead, I started paying more attention. At least I could get more info before any accusations. I started noticing things I hadn't before. She'd become distant, more protective of her phone and iPad, and she was going out way more than usual. Wednesdays and Fridays were her girls' nights, and she'd get all dressed up, claiming she was meeting her friends at some trendy bar or restaurant. I only just noticed because I had been so overwhelmed with work prior to all of that. I didn't ask too many questions in the past, but after finding those glasses and noticing those changes in her behavior, I finally decided to start asking. Much later in the same week, I found the glasses. I casually asked her where she was meeting her friends. She told me the name of some restaurant, nothing special. An hour after she left, I decided to check the location sharing feature we'd set up on our phones years ago. It was for emergencies, and I never really used it before, but this time I did. Sure enough, she wasn't at the restaurant she said she was going to. Instead, her location pinged at some duplex across town, and for the next few Wednesdays and Fridays, I kept an eye on her location. Same thing every time. She was always at that duplex. Maybe she was with her friends there. I didn't know whose place she was in, but she was definitely lying to me, as she was certainly not at any restaurant. I felt so bad. I felt like my world was tearing apart. I also felt pretty dang stupid that I was only just noticing. Like, who knows how long it has been going on? I was so angry and I needed to know who she was going to see. After an online search, I found out that the duplex was home to two tenants. One was a woman, and the name was entirely unfamiliar, but the other was a guy named Jake, and that was a lot more interesting to me. Using the name I got from that search, I located his Instagram. His social media was full of gym selfies, and he had this cocky vibe of a douchebag. He seemed pretty dang young, too. I guess that he was probably around that age Amy was when we first met, so in his mid-20s. She had never mentioned him before, so I knew there was something bad happening. I wanted to blame this so bad on the location sharing feature messing up or something, that I installed a small GPS tracker in her car. The next time she went for one of her nights, I checked the tracker. Sure enough, she went straight to Jake's place again. By this point, I couldn't deny it anymore. Amy was cheating on me. The thing is, I don't want to just explode and confront her without being fully prepared. I want more proof, and frankly, I don't even know how to start the conversation. So here I am, asking you guys for advice. What should I do? How do you even begin to approach something like this? I don't have concrete evidence, but I have evidence that most people would agree points to only one thing. I need to know what I'm meant to do now. Finding those wine glasses was definitely a red flag, and your instincts to dig deeper were spot on. Gather evidence in a smart move, especially since you want to approach her with a clear understanding of what's going on. Consider jotting down specific instances that raise your suspicions: her late nights out, the sudden secrecy with her phone, and of course, those mysterious wine glasses. It's important to have concrete examples when you confront her, as it can help keep the conversation focused. Be prepared for various reactions. She may become defensive or upset, or she might surprise you with honesty. If she gets defensive, well, then you have to ask yourself why she feels the need to defend herself. 9 times out of 10, the cheaters be cheating. Update. After confirming that Amy had been sneaking off to Jake's apartment for weeks, I decided I wasn't going to sit back. A lot of you said that I should stay calm, gather more evidence, and not blow everything up right away. Well, that's exactly what I did. I wanted to hit her where it hurt, but I was going to be smart and measured about it. First, I made sure to document everything. I saved screenshots of the location sharing feature from my phone, showing her consistently at Jake's place instead of the restaurants she claimed to be going to. Then, I took photos of the GPS tracker data, showing her car parked at the same apartment every Friday and Wednesday. I stored everything in a folder on my phone and backed it up to my cloud account just to be safe. I wasn't about to go into this without solid proof. I considered getting a PI, but we weren't even married. So since I wasn't trying to get an airtight divorce case set up, I didn't need to do too much. But I wanted to make sure there was no space at all for her to squeeze out of the accusations. I kept playing dumb, acting like everything was normal. She probably thought I was an idiot, clueless to her affair, and honestly, every time I realized how she must have been happy that I was in the dark. It pissed me off. But behind the scenes, I was preparing. I contacted a lawyer to see what my options were with the house and our finances. Even though we weren't married, After 7 years of living together, our stuff was pretty tangled up. I needed to make sure I didn't lose out on what was mine. Next, I started moving things out bit by bit. Just a little stuff at first. Personal items, important documents, things I knew I'd want if things blew up fast. I saw some videos online recently where a girl trashed her boyfriend's place after a breakup. I wasn't about to let that happen to me, but if it was going to happen, I'd make sure there was nothing that was truly important left behind. I made sure to be careful, moving things out when Amy wasn't around or when she was too distracted with her little fling to notice. Thankfully, she was so wrapped up in Jake and whatever fantasy she was living that she didn't see any of this coming. She had no idea I was onto her, and that's exactly how I wanted it. I wasn't just going to talk with her, I was going to make sure I was ready to walk away without losing anything important. And when the time came, I'd have the upper hand. She's the one who has been eating her cake and having it, so I needed my own moment in the sun. Alright, so here's where things really went down. I decided enough was enough, and it was time to put my plan into action. I was so tired of being around her that I had just had to pull the trigger. Amy had one of her usual Wednesday nights planned, and by this point, I knew exactly where she was headed. I told her earlier that week that I'd be going out of town for a business trip. This wasn't anything out of the ordinary, so she didn't suspect a thing. Wednesday rolled around, and she did the usual routine. Meanwhile, I packed up some stuff, left the house, and drove around aimlessly for a few hours just to pass the time. By late evening, I headed to Jake's place, found a spot to park down the street where they wouldn't notice me, and waited. Checked her location on my phone, and surprise, surprise, she was heading there. At this point, although painful as it was like I was on an adventure. After a bit, I saw her car pull up in the driveway. She got out like it was just another casual night. No big deal. She walked into the building without a care in the world. I'm sitting there watching this whole thing, and I can remember thinking and wondering how the hell I let this go on for so long. But anyway, I waited a bit longer just to make sure they were settled in, and then I made my move. I got out of my car, crept up to the house, and wouldn't you know it, the front door wasn't even locked. You'd actually be surprised how many people don't lock their front doors until they're ready to go to bed. I slipped in as quietly as possible, and just headed to where I could hear all the messing around happening. The sounds from the room were disgusting. Moaning, giggling, all of it. I opened the door and just started taking pictures, right in the middle of it. I didn't even feel shocked anymore, just numb. The flash alerted them, and they both froze. Amy's face went pale, and she just stared at me like a deer in the headlights. Jake, of course, just sat there, probably trying to figure out if I was going to kill him or something. I had no idea if he knew she had a partner. Either way, I didn't say a word, and I didn't even feel the need to. I just walked right out of the house and drove straight to a motel. I don't know if she tried to come after me because I didn't even bother looking back. But what I felt that night afterwards was not anger. Instead, I felt in control. Like I had the upper hand finally. Being cheated on is horrible because you really have no say in the entire thing, but I finally managed to at least get some control. That night, I went ahead and finished the plan I'd been working on. First off, the house was in my name, so I had put it up for sale. As you know, my plans had been in motion for quite some time, so I had a prospective buyer, and he and his wife had already come for a walkthrough. I eventually sold it 1.5 weeks after I walked in on her cheating. I moved the rest of my stuff out the next day. She still went to work, but she had been calling me over and over since the night before, but I didn't answer. She didn't bother coming back home, which was smart because I really couldn't have promised that things wouldn't have gotten messy. I just sent her a single text. Your stuff's in the garage. The house will be sold. Get out. After that, I blocked her number. But I wasn't going to just leave without making sure she knew what was happening. After all, I had just walked in on them in bed, but she had no idea how I knew. I wanted her to know, and I wanted her to know how long I knew, so she wouldn't think that she was that smart. Before I left for good, I printed out the GPS logs, screenshots of her at Jake's apartment, the photos I took of them in bed, and the receipt of the sold house. Everything was time-stamped. I taped everything right to the front door, so she wasn't going to miss it. In fact, if someone else happened to come across it, I really didn't give a crap. Then I sent a little something to her family. I made a Dropbox link and sent it to her parents, her sister, and even her best friend. They could open it and see every single piece of evidence, all of it. No more lies, no more excuses. I really hesitated before doing this last part, but I eventually pressed the send button. It could definitely have a lot of consequences for me, but I knew I'd deal with them later. My phone kept ringing later that night, and no, it wasn't just from her. My family and her family was all over it, but I only bothered picking up my mom's calls. My mom told me how Amy had been calling her phone, and even my dad's, crying and freaking out, trying to explain that I left her with nothing. So I had to calm my mom down and explain everything to them, the cheating, the sneaking around, the reason why I did what I did. This wasn't something that just happened overnight. It had been going on for a while. My mom, of course, said she didn't like the way I handled things. She said I should have just talked to Amy instead of blowing everything up. But my dad, on the other hand, didn't say much. But I could tell from his tone that he was kind of proud of how I handled it. I can only imagine what Amy felt when she saw everything taped to the front door and I realized her family knew the truth. Her whole world must have crumbled right there. And her family? Well, they've been a mix of threatening me and begging me to take her back. They've been calling and texting, trying to convince me she made a mistake and deserves another chance. Yeah, right. I guess her thing with Jake didn't work out as planned. I mean, I was out of the picture, so she could go straight for him, but apparently that didn't work out. He probably just wanted the fun without the drama, and once the sneaking around wasn't exciting anymore, he bailed. Now Amy's resorted to sending me emails. Most of them are just her begging for another shot, saying how sorry she is and how much she regrets what she did. The usual. A few of them are her trying to twist it around, saying it's my fault she cheated. Apparently I wasn't moving fast enough with marriage and kids, and that's why she did what she did. After all, we weren't committed to each other in a meaningful way. Like that's supposed to make it okay, and I should welcome her back. I really don't care anymore. I skim the emails just enough to know what she's saying, then delete them right away. Almost a decade of my life gone. Time that I won't get back. Right now, everything seems bleak and it feels like I'm going to be alone forever. But hey, things will get better. I know that. Thank you all for helping me with this. I wish I could truly appreciate all the support I was given, but the best I can say is thank you. It's understandable that you wanted her to realize the extent of your knowledge and the consequences of her actions, and leaving the evidence at her front door was a bold move. It's also commendable that you reached out to a lawyer early on, considering the complexities of your shared life together. Protecting your interests while navigating the heartbreak was wise, and selling the house quickly was a strategic way to ensure you didn't get left with anything that reminded you of the relationship. As for her family's reaction, it's tough when they try to guilt you into reconciling. It's not your responsibility to make them comfortable with your decision. You need to prioritize your healing. Have you found clues that led you down a rabbit hole to uncover something you maybe wish you hadn't? Share your stories with us in the comments below. And thank you for joining us today on rSpace. Be sure to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on our next video. See you next time.